Good morning, Saints. I'm going to be doing another book review here. This is on Laurie's book, Tell Someone You Can Share the Good News. And this book is on evangelism, as you could tell from the title. It's not a very big book. It's actually a great little handy-sized book. I think it's like 6 inches by 4 inches. It's a small book. And I'm just going to read the back so you get an understanding of what the book is about. Understand, this book is not written to make you feel bad or condemn you if you have not engaged others with the gospel message. This book is written to encourage and inspire you. Even though pastor and author Laurie is a gospel presenting professional, in this book he tells stories of his own success, of his own failure and success. The most important things you will find here are biblical principles that you can apply yourself. Taken from the life and witness of Jesus and tested over Greg's 40 years of ministry in both one-on-one experiences and large-scale evangelistic arena and stadium events. These ideas are intended to mobilize every person in the church to tell someone about Jesus Christ. And Laurie is the pastor of the Harvest Christian Fellowship in Southern California, a Calvary Chapel pastor. But this book is very good. Me and my wife are going through it. As he says in the beginning, understand this book is not written to make you feel bad or condemn you. And that's one thing I like about the book. He doesn't beat you over the head or try to condemn believers for not evangelizing. Instead, what he does, he encourages all Christians to tell someone, to tell the good news to the lost. And I really like that, because there's a lot of churches, or I wouldn't say a lot, but there's some churches out there that they beat believers over the head with the Bible just because they're not evangelizing or they're not engaging someone with the gospel. And that does a lot of damage to believers. I have little patience for other Christians when they bombard Christians for not evangelizing, and then they make them feel bad and guilt trip them. And all that does is it lays heavy guilt trips on that believer, and it completely shatters their encouragement to do it. Years ago, I actually had a brother do that to me. The brother was a lot older than I was, but this brother had no grace whatsoever towards me. And it's almost like if I didn't do it, if I didn't evangelize his way, he would just go off on me with scriptures and say that you're a coward, this and this and that. The brother had no grace, no compassion, no encouragement, and all it made me do was just not wanting to be around the guy. So I just try to avoid him as much as possible. And that's something that should not be done to believers. We shouldn't beat believers over the head with the Bible. If you want to encourage your elder believers to evangelize, do it in a gracious, kind way. In a gracious, kind way. And evangelism is supposed to be done out of grace and not guilt. But just wanted to share that little story of why we shouldn't beat believers over the head with the Bible. And that's one thing I like that Laurie does throughout the book. Instead, he encourages believers to evangelize, and he does it in a way where it makes you feel guilty, but not guilt-tripped. He'll say things like, "Oh, well, what are you going to do to share the gospel? What are the next steps you're going to do?" And he does things like that, and I like it because he doesn't make you feel bad about it. But it definitely stirs your soul to do something, to go and tell someone about the good news of Jesus Christ. And the book is, it's 130 pages, but it goes by really, really fast. The pages themselves are not very big. It's not like the standard book. So when you're flipping through the pages, they go by actually really fast. So the book is concise and gets straight to the point. So you have introduction, chapter 1, something Christians and non-Christians have in common. Chapter 2, effective sharing starts with caring. Why share your faith? Where to preach the gospel? When should we share the gospel? This is number 6, the how-to, Jesus-style evangelism. Number 7, the how-to, the big one that got away. Number 8, the power of your personal story. Number 9, what is the gospel? And 10, closing the deal. Epilogue, my first sermon. Postscript, 5 steps to start and keep an evangelistic culture. About the author, and then notes. And all the contents in his book are completely practical. And that's something that I like in this book, is that all the stuff that he gives you stories of his own failure and success in his personal ministry. So he gives you personal examples. This isn't all just theory. And he draws out examples from the Bible, different people from the Bible, but he's mainly drawing examples from the life of Jesus and how Jesus evangelized, and how we can follow his example of evangelism on caring, loving for others. And so he does all those examples. And you always want to be careful what type of book on evangelism you buy out there, because I've seen some very bad ones. Some of them are so academic to the point where they have little practicality, but this one is very, very practical. So he talks about his own, he gives you his own personal stories, the first time he ever evangelized, something Christians, this is chapter 1, and just to keep in mind, he does take scriptures from modern translations. So wherever he's giving you scripture references, you always want to look that up in the King James Version. When I went through the book, I didn't go through every single verse, just because I didn't have the time to go through every single verse. I did look up some, but not every single verse. Just keep that in mind, that Laurie does not quote from the King James Version. There might have been a few verses here and there he did, but in this channel, I always encourage believers to get yourself a King James Version of the Bible. That is God's perfect preserved word in the English language, and ditch all the modern commentaries, modern Bibles. But nevertheless, aside from that, it's still a very good book. Don't let that discourage you from getting it. Very, very good book. This is an interesting one. This is from the first chapter. Maybe that's why statistics indicate that 95% of all Christians have never led another person to Christ. For many followers of Jesus, the Great Commission has instead become the Great Omission, and that is more than a pity, it's a travesty. And and he talks about the sin of not sharing the gospel, of not obeying the Great Commission. That's, this statistic is pretty sad. I mean, if you think about it, 95% of Christians have not once evangelized to the lost. And that's pretty sad. We need to flip that around and get more laborers into the harvest. And he talks about the sin of not sharing, a sin that's often not really heard these days in the church. If we're not evangelizing to the lost, it is a sin. And because it's a disobedience to Christ's command in Mark 16:15, the Great Commission. And it is a sin. Now, obviously, the Bible does not prescribe a certain method of salvation, a certain method of evangelism, nor does it tell us how often we should do it. So we don't want to get legalistic with that. But the point is to live a lifestyle of evangelism. If we go to the store, we go to the ATM, we can leave tracts there. We can give tracts to people. Where we park near, if we go to the store and we're parking our cars, we can leave like 3 or 4 tracts to the cars near to our cars that are parked. So we want to do something as we head out to the store. And something I've started doing was, or I'm just started doing, or that I'm going to implement in my time when I go to the store, or if I have to buy some groceries, or need to go to the store for whatever X reason. If I see someone on the aisle, I'm going to give them just a gospel tract. And that's something I'm going to add when I go to the stores. So like you see titles like this, like, so the chapters have many titles, subtitles within the chapter. So the chapters go by pretty quickly. There's maybe 1 or 2 chapters in the book that are kind of long, and through one thing he does add at the end of every chapter is a prayer to motivate us, a prayer on motivating us to evangelize. So he gives you bold titles like that. What's your excuse? Clearly, God could reach people without us, but instead he has chosen to work through us. In fact, he seems to go out of his way to find the most unlikely candidates to accomplish his divine purposes. So that's what I like about the book. He gives you, he stirs our souls to go evangelize, and I like the way he approaches that. He doesn't condemn, as said earlier in the back of his book. He does it in a way where he stirs your soul to go evangelize without condemning you. So you feel that horror of not evangelizing. And we often put up these excuses that, oh, God can't use me because of my personality. God can't use me because of this or that. And the list can go on. And if we really think about it, like he takes here the example of Moses, of Noah, David, all the people that God used were imperfect. Nobody was perfect. All of them had their imperfections. Just like us, we all have our imperfections. None of us are perfect. We all have areas that are not up to par. So even then, God can still use us and be used by him mightily. And throughout the chapters, he does add these little boxes just to illustrate and emphasize a point that was taken from the subtopics. So that way it gets you thinking and meditating on. Like this one says, no, you may not feel qualified, but God is not looking for ability as much as he is looking for availability. God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. That's powerful. And one thing that I love that he points out is towards the end of the chapter, he talks about how it's not our job to convince the person when we're evangelizing, but that's the job of the Holy Ghost. We're simply called to be faithful. Whether the person makes a decision or not at that moment, that's up to them. But it's not our job. You know, you often hear people today, it's like they force the gospel on people, and then they're trying to get them to make that decision. But such people are not understanding biblically that God is the one that giveth the increase. You know, one may water, the other one may plant, the other one may water, but the one that gives the increase is God, and we should not forget that. So it's our job just to be faithful and share the gospel to as many people as we come into contact. Now, that does not mean we're going to, evangelize to every single person you see down the street or every single 5 minutes, but we should just live that evangelistic lifestyle daily, in our daily life, and not worrying about whether that person's going to make a decision or not. Our job is not that. It's just simply to be faithful and preaching the gospel to others. And another thing I like that he points out in the book is not to be afraid of talking about sin and of hell, something that we don't want to leave out. So this is a powerful chapter. And effective sharing starts with caring, because if we're just not naturally going to have that burden in our souls to evangelize, well then guess what? We're not going to naturally go do it when we're outside. So he has things like this, like, do you care? And this is the last part of chapter 2. And then he says in the last paragraph, would you be willing to lose your dignity for a moment and engage someone with the gospel message? Would you be willing to leave your comfort zone and take a little step of faith? Would you be honest enough to say that perhaps you don't care as much as you should about people who do not yet know the Lord? Wow, that's very convicting. Allow me to make a suggestion. Why don't you pause for a moment before reading on and pray a short prayer, something along these lines. And as I said, he adds these little short prayers at the end of each chapter. And the reality is that many of us, if we're really honest, and we've let a lot of people bypass our life, and we just don't take the time to give them a gospel tract or engage them in a conversation or whatnot. And I understand that we all have different personalities. Not every believer is going to be comfortable approaching somebody and start talking with them. That's just something that not all believers have, and that's okay. There's other ways to do it. You can give somebody a gospel tract if you're not comfortable, and there's not one correct way to do it. It's whatever God has allowed all believers to do it the way we feel led to do it. But so yeah, I'm not going to go through the whole book, but I think you get the point by now. And like I said, the chapters go by quick. All the chapters go by quick. They're not long. The book is concise, and I think you can get it now. They have it on sale right now at christianbook.com. It's $5.99, so very cheap. A very good investment. Just for $6, you can get this book. This is a good one to put in your church if you want to get people. One of the best ways, I think, to get people in your church to evangelize the lost is to put some of these books. If you have a ministry table, or if you have a table, we have it at our church, a table where we put literature. Or if sometimes these tables are usually located within on the entrance to the chapels. And if you have a ministry table where you put literature in the front of your entrance of your chapel, you can probably buy several copies of these and leave them on a table, that way other believers can get encouraged to go share the good news. And as I said, it's 130 pages. Very, very good course on evangelism. You'll learn a lot from this. Even though it's concise, don't underestimate it. You can still learn a lot from this book. There's a lot to apply. And whatever you learn from this book, you can actually apply to all types of different methods of evangelism. So, thank you for watching, and God bless.